All right, Bruce, we're live. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm great, Steve. Thanks for having me here onto today's call.
Absolutely. So, welcome everyone to another episode of Rocket MSP Podcast. I'm Steve Taylor, your host. I'm joined by Bruce McCully with Galactic Advisors, and I'm interested in what you have to say because, man, I've had some people on here that um have not known some things that I thought was just, I don't know, like simple, like everyone kind of knows what this is. So before we even talk about what you do or who you are or anything, Bruce, will you sign a BAA?
Of course, I'll sign a BAA. Um, what are we signing a BAA for? As in, like, do you have protected health information that we need to be worried about here? As in, some medical records that we need to be concerned about?
Well, I just genuinely needed to know you know what a BAA is, okay?
Oh, okay.
Um, so so that's out of the way. Everybody, he's smart. Uh, we may have to go over that again later as more people pop in, but um, yeah, we've had a few guests over the last month or so that have never heard of a BAA, and I don't know how that's possible in today's landscape, especially when they're working with doctors' offices, and it's scary, like, and I want to help them. I do, like, the one I had, somebody just sent me a BAA, like, here's my MSP's BAA, please give it to them, like. So I mean that's cool, but then the other, um like, the audience just kind of destroyed them, man. And I ended up pulling the episode because I didn't feel like it was adding any value. I felt like it was just like, let's watch some guy get beat up for 2 hours, like, and that's no fun,
Well, I didn't know
so
that's what I was in for, Steve. So I'm looking forward to this. Do I need to take my shirt off? Like, are we going to throw down here? Is that what's going to happen?
uh well, here's the deal. If you take your shirt off, then I might take my shirt off, and nobody wants that, okay? In fact, I could monetize this podcast real quick by charging you guys to keep my clothes on. That that might actually work. Um, but no, let's dial it in. Let's give you some softball questions. All right. So how do you find the mass and velocity of? No, I'm kidding. So Bruce, what? Tell us about yourself, man. I see on LinkedIn that you've been doing this Galactic Advisors thing for a year ish, and you've been running this MSP for 22 years. So obviously you know what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Um,
So
Tell
I
us
guess
about your MSP.
a little bit of my background. I started an MSP about 20 years ago. I stumbled along. I don't know how big different people's businesses are on the call, but I stumbled along under $1 million for quite some time in revenue, and then kind of figured stuff out about maybe 8 years ago or so, and we started growing, which was good. We started growing quickly. So when I sold it back in January, we were doing 8.5 million in revenue, and that was MRR revenue. So you can imagine there's this little thing called a multiplier when you sell an MSP,
Mhm.
and that's a pretty nice little thing. But the reason I sold the MSP to start Galactic is, I guess, it's kind of twofold. The first part is, um, I see a lot of folks out there who were, like, when I was running my MSP, that we were competing with, that were selling services at like $30 an endpoint or something like this, and I see the damage that they're doing to our reputation as a community. And
Mhm.
so I started to think, how do I, as an MSP, even compete with that? And the other component is kind of a couple of things came together. The other component is I, our MSP, we're going into hospitals and recovering them from ransomware. Steve, have you guys ever dealt with ransomware, like in your environments, or had to be pulled in to like clean one up?
Honestly, I haven't. Knock on wood, my clients have never gotten hit, and I have referred out. I've got some colleagues that I trust to fix that.
Perfect. Yes. So what we would do is when the IT department was, overwhelmed by the attackers, we were the people that they would call, and we would fly a team in, and our team would work 24/7, getting them back up online. And you can imagine, I mean, a normal attack would be around 700 and some users. And that was like the small, like they just got a small bit of the facility, and we would go in and recover them. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I was running my MSP was like, how do we get in front of this? How do we communicate to these people? Like, hey, you've got this problem. Like if you just invest in this, and this, then you wouldn't have this happen. I mean, I remember we did a vulnerability assessment for one hospital in November. We were out there in November. We did the vulnerability assessment. We told them exactly how an attacker could get in. And then they contacted us in February, and we recovered their environment from ransomware. And the attacker got in exactly the way that we anticipated. And so what I decided to do is I decided to make a change. I want to help protect 1 million people. So that's my personal mission. And in order to do that, I decided that I needed to help MSPs like take the guesswork out of security, figure out like how this stuff actually works and whether it works, and if you're getting alerts for stuff and whether your security stacks are right. And basically what we learned with the hospitals is that you couldn't do that through vulnerability analysis. Like you can't, if I come and look at your network, Steve, and I point out the vulnerabilities, you probably, maybe you invest in fixing them, but maybe not. However, if I do a penetration test and I show you exactly what an attacker is going to get to, how they're going to get to it, and what they're going to get, that's the difference between having somebody tell you that you should do something and having them show you why you should do it. Showing them why is much more effective, we found. So anyway, so that's what we're up to now at Galactic. And I'm taking the operations and information that I knew about growing and scaling an MSP, and I'm combining that with the security aspects and just helping anybody who'll listen, and also helping define what BAAs are so that everybody knows and everybody can
I like it already, man.
respond
I like it already.
properly.
All right. So Galactic Advisors, you said that basically you will help tell MSPs using your penetration testing what the vulnerabilities are, because you actually prove what the vulnerabilities are, and you'll also kind of help them fix it. Like, here's the tools you should be using, here's the configuration you should be using, that type of stuff, right?
Well, exactly. So when we were doing ransomware recovery for those hospitals, we had a forensics team. And that forensics team would go in and figure out exactly how the attacker got in, what they got access to. We would recover the binaries, usually recover the rootkits or whatever types of tools that the attackers were using. And we use those to develop a pen testing kit that is very effective and pretty easy to run. I mean, usually what we do is we send a link to the MSP that we're going to be doing the evaluation for, have them click the link on 3 to 5 computers, and we examine the configurations for their tools, like you said. But we also look at whether or not those tools are actually responding, whether or not there are event logs for stuff. Basically, we go through and help you understand exactly where those spots are. And it's not that I tell you how to fix it, because I'm not vendor specific. Like, I'm not going to come to you and say, Steve, you got to get rid of your Sonic walls and put in Palo Altos, or you better junk all of this paid for stuff and let's move over to PFSense. No, I'm not going to be that guy. But I'm going to say, look, if you're running a Fortinet, here's what you should be seeing. I'm going to move a malicious packet across your network. And if you don't get an alarm going off, when I try to move it inside, like from the outside in, then we have an issue. If I'm able to move it from the inside out, that's an indicator of compromise. If I'm moving naughty bits out of your network, then you should be sending some alarms up. And so if you're not, then that's a good way to know, hey, we gotta make some changes to how we're paying attention to that traffic out there.
Gotcha. So we got our first question from the YouTube comments. Ray would like to know if you are using ConnectWise at Galactic Advisors.
So when I was running my MSP, we were using ConnectWise. We don't use ConnectWise at Galactic right now, as in we're not a ConnectWise partner at the moment. We are actually, since we don't actually do the same things that you do as an MSP, like we don't track tickets and that stuff. We don't really have the need for that type of PSA. However, when I was running my MSP, we did use ConnectWise. It's a pretty powerful tool. Are you asking because you want to like look at other products, or are you asking because you want to know what are best practices for ConnectWise? What's going on?
I'm thinking, I mean, I would ask just because I'm genuinely curious what like the vendors use. Even though you're not entirely vendor, you are a vendor to MSPs. But
Yeah.
since you're also providing like IT services to companies and hospitals and whatnot, even though you're just doing the Galactic Advisor stuff, maybe ConnectWise is still a good fit. It's
Yes.
just for me, it's interesting to learn like what makes sense.
So, Steve, on our side, we keep everything in a custom portal because, we have developers that are writing all of this code that does all this stuff. And we want to be able to integrate all of that with our email communication and all of that stuff. So everything that we're running is custom. We're not really running a standard PSA. We don't use an RMM.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
You could use like Salesforce or Trello or like literally anything else. Integrate things with Zapier back and forth. Like now you have a product internally that you have to maintain.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that we're not quite a service company. And what I mean by that is our product is our pen testing tools. I mean, really, when you start looking at it, it's the reports that we generate, all of that stuff. And it's got some sensitive data around it. And so we're very cautious about what we integrate with. We do use a product called Infusionsoft for our actual marketing side. Like as in like the email blasts and, bothering people until they commit, that kind of stuff.
So why did you go with Infusionsoft when you could have just done MailChimp? I look at Infusionsoft and I just see something that has a lot of features I'll never use and a premium price tag just because you're paying for the name.
Yeah, so there's two aspects to that. The first one is when I was running my MSP, we used a vendor for marketing services that
Robin Robbins.
Yes, I wasn't sure if we were allowed to mention people's names on the call. So
Robin's great, man. I've honestly never spoken to anything Robin, but I mean, I've heard nothing but amazing things. Yeah.
Yep. So
you can whoever, as long as you're saying nice things.
I only have nice things to say. Don't worry. So we used Robin Robbins campaigns. I mean, that was when we were growing the MSP. That was a major component to our growth, like getting that, basically breaking through the noise with the marketing parts of her product. So she uses Infusionsoft, and so we're used to it. When I launched Galactic, I reached out to Robin and said, look, I'm not an MSP, but I need some marketing stuff. Can you help me? And so she did help with a ton of stuff. And so that's been very helpful for us.
With $8.5 million laying around in the bank account, I'm sure it's easy to literally get anybody to do whatever you want at this point, right?
Well, I don't know, whatever you want. And also we grew it to 8.5 million. There's this little thing called a multiplier. And anyways, we should talk about that over a beer sometime.
Well, what I suspect is you actually have like 16 million in the bank or something like that because it's multiplied. But I was just not getting everyone excited. I was like, because they would be really
guys,
impressed if they knew you had 16 or 20 million in the bank.
Guys, when you're going through, and I'm going to avoid answering that, but when you're going through and you're building your business, make sure that you're building MRR, right? Because if you take there's this multiplier for MRR business, and there's another multiplier for your NRR, your non-recurring revenue. The NRR multiplier is a decimal. Okay, it's like 0.8, or you can see higher. Like I've seen like 1.1. I did a ton of research on this before selling my MSP, but there's the other side, which is your MRR, and that has a multiplier too. And those multipliers are over 1, which makes everything a lot more fun. So anyways, back to why Infusionsoft. So we were used to it. The thing we like about it, I don't know if you could do this with MailChimp, we like the ability to have a campaign that reminds our salesperson to call, and then we can track to make sure they did it and all that stuff. And I don't know, can you do that in MailChimp?
I don't know, but I know that other tools like Drip and Active Campaign will do that stuff, and I know that those are, again, more cost effective. But hey, you know what? If you're using something because you like it and it does all the things that you need it to do, like, there's something to be said about that. If your company can afford it and you're not eating too much into your profits, you might save $50 to switch to something else, and then there's a huge learning curve and everything. So if you've been using Infusionsoft for years, like, just stick with it. Don't be like me and no, Eric, my mic is messed up, so I'm sorry in advance for all of my terrible sound quality, guys. So yeah, I'm using this little mic down here. Knowing these guys, they just took that completely inappropriately, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what in the heck is Steve pointing to? Because this cannot be good.
Never mind. It's a little Rode video mic. Okay, so it's one of those $60 mics. The blue, it stopped working literally as we were talking. I couldn't figure out what was going wrong. Yes, I didn't. All right, so just genuine curiosity, and this can be a very easy answer. Mergers and acquisitions, how big of a pain in the ass is that?
So I never did any. I stayed away from M&A, as in when I was running the MSP. When they
you
acquired,
got paid though.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a different situation. So here's what I would recommend. There's a couple of things. The first one is things are going to change as soon as the company's purchased. And as the founder, you may not love those changes, right? Like, especially since you've been running things the way you like to run them for a long, long time. keep the amount of time that you have to stay at the company as little as you can, even if it costs you a little bit of money to get out. I suggest you be prepared to get out. And not that any changes happen that I'm upset about, just that, like, when you're used to saying, hey, go do this, and calling the shots, and then all of a sudden you're not, it's a little bit of a challenge. It's a little bit of a mental challenge. And, like, I'm sure the folks on this call that have started companies, you started them because, one, you wanted to be in charge of your own destiny. And all of a sudden, for the first time in 20 years, not in charge of my own destiny. It was really crazy. And we kept that time very, very short. I'd make sure that you do the same. Especially in my case, I had a business partner who was able to stay and take over the reins, and so I could get out right away. So my time there was 90 days. And I think it ended up being about 115 days or something like that. But I would definitely plan, if you're on the leadership team / you started the company, like, just plan for having an exit and make sure that exit can be in a short enough time that you can stay there helping the entire time, and you're not getting in the way of yourself or the business is what I would say. Just because you want to be known as the guy that left everything in a great place, in a place that everything is moving the right direction, not in a place where you're like that curmudgeony old guy sitting in a corner bitching about it.
All right. So let's get into some security stuff. I know Galactic Advisors, you sell direct as well as to MSPs.
Well, let's be real clear about this. So what we do is we do basically three things. The first thing is we help MSPs build their own security stack and get their houses in order. Okay, I like to think about it like this: like, you're piloting an airplane, and there's a whole bunch of people on that plane, and if you're screwing up, they're all going down with you. Like, they don't get a choice. And so that's the first thing that we help with. The other thing that we do is, once you have those pieces in order, once you're able to keep an attacker from moving laterally inside of one of your environments, and you're able to detect motion, you're able to detect an attacker, once you're able to do those things, then we give you access to our penetration testing tools so that you can use them to convert a prospect into a client.
Okay.
And then the third thing that we do is we do third-party Overwatch / vCISO services. And this is the direct part that you're talking about. But the only way that we do that is if we're brought in by an MSP, and they don't have their own CISO services. And the way that we do it is we do it as a third party. So we're actually invoicing the client directly. And the reason that we're doing it that way is because we want to make sure that we maintain a third party perspective as we're helping the client and the MSP work through any of the security bumps in their security program.
Okay. So that all sounds really cool, comprehensive, thought out. I like it. And what I believe I'm hearing is you don't pursue hospitals and banks and these companies. You are channel only, in the sense that you will only work with a client when brought in by an MSP. Now, it's okay if they would rather have you bill the client directly.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. And then at that point, do you give them a finder's fee or a commission or anything?
Yeah, we do a revenue share with the MSP,
Okay.
and that's how we take care of that. Yep.
Perfect. All right. And when I look at your website, let me open up my browser here. I want to share my browser
Oh no!
because
Did you find a
no,
typo? You're making me nervous.
Don't worry. I'm not going to be mean. Not yet, anyway. Got nothing, man.
Steve, I feel
right,
like I should have brought a beer or something with me. I didn't realize.
Hey, whatever floats your boat. Homepage. There we go. All right, so you should be able to see my screen now. All right, so when I look at this, I guess when I like briefly scam, I'm reading the comments again. When I briefly scan this, like a busy MSP would, I see, is your network secure from hackers, scammers, and thieves? And then I look at services, and I see all this like compliance and security consulting. So like my assumption is you do penetration testing and maybe something along the lines of auditing what we're doing with our clients to let us know where our strengths and weaknesses are. I did not take away, again, in the brief 15 to 30-second glance that an IT guy gives you, that you have like this whole tool sharing thing. You know what
Do you
I
see where
mean?
it says I'm a managed service provider there, just under those 5 things? I might need to like make that dance, like make that bigger or something for you, slash for our client base, because
Sure.
I guess our prospects, because that takes you into what we do for the MSP side.
Gotcha. And see, I didn't click on that because I saw it was a button, but I was like, well, why would I click that? I'm just going to go through their services.
Yeah,
Like I just
yeah.
thought it was going to take me specifically to one of your service pages. So with that said, this makes it extra confusing if there's a Galactic Advisors and a Galactic Scan. I believe what you're doing is you're making it so that way we, the MSP, can present galacticadvisors.com to our client and say, check these guys out. They're amazing. I want to bring them in. It's only going to cost you XYZ dollars. And let me know if you have any questions about Bruce or his company. And then Galactic Scan is there so that way we can learn about Galactic Advisors and what you're doing for us. Is that accurate?
Correct. Exactly.
Okay.
And Galactic Scan happens to be the name of one of our tools that goes through and does analysis inside of environments, like it actually does pen testing and stuff.
So I'm not sure how it's helping you with the SEO because I don't do SEO on multiple sites like that. But I can tell you that if a regular old end user company can just click on this and pretend they're me, oh look, this is what he's doing for Steve's MSP, then why not just have everything on one domain
Yeah.
and then have a partner, or at least just have a partner menu up here?
Mm-hmm.
That way we understand, like,
yeah, that's a great idea.
And I guess what I'm saying is when I look at this, I assume like these are all your services. I don't think to click here and like learn about what you're doing for us with our clients.
Yeah, I like the idea of
That's all.
adding that in the services area. I think we could do a couple of other spots with that. We could maybe even combine the two. It's just that we I have to think about how to do that. This is helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And hey, you know what? You'll get all of this and more with a podcast with Steve. All right, so let's talk about some actual security stuff now. So how screwed are MSPs? Because this landscape's getting ridiculous. I feel like there's not a light at the end of this cybersecurity tunnel.
Well, I think the thing that, the thing you have to think about, and when I set out on my mission to protect over 1 million people, the thing that was top of my mind was, do we have a tool problem? Like, do we have too many tools? Do we have the wrong tools? Do we have the right tools that are configured wrong? Like, what's going on here? Or do we have an operations problem where we have the right tools configured properly, but the wrong processes to support those tools? Or do we have a marketing problem where we have the wrong tools supported by the right processes and the right people, but the marketing on the tools doesn't match up with what they're actually doing for us, right? So there's all of these things that could be going on. And what I quickly learned is that, first off, the MSP community, like as a whole, we're interested in improving our security posture. When I started this whole thing, before we started auditing MSPs, I thought that I was the only one out there that was interested in improving my security posture. Now I understand that it is across the board. Everybody is interested. I also thought that I was the only one that would, like, I used to lose sleep. Like, I used to have a hard time going to bed because I was thinking to myself, what if our lab tech server gets hacked tonight? Like, we're so screwed. Like, just think about, like, I mean, anyway, so that would keep me up. And so what I ended up realizing after going through and auditing, and we've done now just over 450 audits of MSPs, so we've gotten a number of environments, and I'm speaking from data. What I've come to realize is everybody wants to do the right thing. Like, we all want to do the right thing. There's very few, I would say, I've ran into 3 people so far that have been like, no, I don't really care about this stuff. I'm just looking for sales tools, and it doesn't sound like you're going to give them to me unless I harden my own house. So I'm not interested. I've only had that happen 3 times. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, as a community, are we screwed? No. Are we going to have to learn a hell of a lot more about security and how to implement security so it doesn't impact our operations? Heck yeah. Like, that's going to be the biggest spot, I think. And obviously you're talking to a guy that's very, halfway down the path, right? So, of course I believe this, but I think that that's going to be where the money's at in 2021 and beyond, is how to grow and scale your MSP and make sure that you're providing not just compliant environments, because you can be compliant and completely insecure. Those hospitals are great examples of that. I'm talking secure environments. How can you do that and be able to scale? That's those 2 things added together equals money if you're looking to grow your business.
So, what's your pricing like for MSPs to get started with you?
Yeah. So what does it cost to get started? So, first off, we will come in and do a free assessment of any MSP for their understanding of their stack. In fact, if you want to go to like www.galacticscan.com/stack, you can sign up right there, and we'll go in and we'll analyze your tools. We'll show you whether or not they're working properly, whether or not they're responding. We'll spend time explaining what you might be missing. We've found there's actually a number of different layers that we find missing inside of MSPs sometimes. So we go through, we have a layered model that we can share with you. It's really to help the community. That's my major push, is how do we help folks out? So that's one thing that you can do. And that's the F word. I mean, free. You know, the F word. Come on, that's funny, Steve. At least give me a little bit of a laugh for that. So we'll do that for free. There's no cost to doing that. Now, on the other side of things, how much does it cost per month for our services? Our minimum services are about $500 a month. So that's, you know, what you're looking at. And we go up from there.
All right. So free assessment, $500 a month to start. Pricing can go up, but at least we know that there is a barrier of entry of, you know, 500 is the minimum invoice you'll send out. All right. So let's talk about some security quick wins, I want to call them, because I feel like there are probably some things that MSPs should be doing, could be doing as like a bare minimum, whether their clients have, you know, compliance or not. So like, where do we even start? And before we do that, somebody asked, so they weren't here for that part. Can you explain to Shiva what a BAA is and if you'll sign one?
All right. So isn't that when you like the starter's broken on your car and you call AAA, it's an 800 number, and you report the issue and they send you somebody that's a BAA, a badass automobile?
No. So BAA, I think that's the one where you're in AA. And you'll be there later. I think that's just no. We talked about this at the beginning, Shiva. He knows what a BAA is. He will sign one for MSPs and for their clients as needed. Are there any other compliance regulations where you would need to sign some type of agreement like that?
So we do an NDA. If you decide to have us analyze your environment, we actually provide you an NDA right out of the gate, like, because we want to make sure that you understand that your data is super important to us, and we actually keep it much more secure than probably any of your other vendors are at this point.
Or at least probably us, right?
I didn't want to say that. I was really trying to. I was thinking it, and I was like, "Oh, that's not going to go over well." But yeah, probably more secure than you do. I'll tell you. You're asking quick wins for security. I'll tell you two things. Like, just do yourself a favor, and you know those SBA loan sheets that half of you filled out so that you could get the SBA money to keep it rolling through COVIDs. Well, that form has like a whole bunch of information about you on it. In fact, everything I need to do a port out attack on you, like your social security number, information for your bank accounts, like all the fun stuff. And so I would definitely take that and throw it in like a Veracrypt vault that dismounts itself after 30 minutes of non-use. And that's even if you have BitLocker on your device. And the other thing I would do is, if you're a bigger MSP, let's say you have a 401k or something like this, your team does a census each year, a 401k census. We find these all the time inside of environments with everybody's social security numbers on it, usually on the CEO's computer because he looked at it or has to sign it. So do yourself a favor, same place with that. In fact, I keep a Veracrypt vault around just to be able to drop in PII into. Obviously, you can use like the OneDrive personal vaults, but they don't have that for business. So that's coming, I hear. I was actually talking to somebody at Microsoft that should be out in the coming months, an actual vault that you can, imagine this, a vault that you can put your stuff in that everybody can't get to. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Like, man, what did people do 60 years ago when they needed a secure place to put things in that they didn't want people to get to?
I'll tell you what they did. They made things like this, right? Like, are you familiar? Have you ever seen one of these? You can't open it because it's locked, but there's like a certain piece that if you move it on the front, then it'll open up. That's what they did. So this is, just so you know, this is where I keep all of my credit card information 60 years ago. Just kidding.
So to clarify, you have
kidding.
the equivalent of an adult toddler toy, where all they have to do is put the square in the round hole, right?
That's exactly what they did. 60. You asked me. I thought this was important information to share with you on protecting your information.
John says a hammer will open that right up, man.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So will a fire.
Yeah. That's probably not the best place to keep some important documents. I at least have one of those like waterproof, fireproof safes. The keys, I don't want to lose them, so I keep them in the keyhole. Kidding. So kidding.
I can wait a second. So let's talk about that for a minute, because I had some very important documents in a waterproof, fireproof safe, and they are missing. And so too is the safe. You see, I have a hangar in Nashville at an airport. If you guys want to just Google like Nashville tornado 2020. 2020 was a hard year for me, by the way. So I mean, not terrible, like I'm here, but so I had my logbooks, which are kind of a very important document for an airplane.
That's all of your flight records.
Yeah, it's like all the maintenance and like all the stuff that if they're missing, the airplane's worth like half as much as it was before with the logbooks, right? And so I had a safe in that hangar.
Keep those in the glove box, just so you know.
Yeah,
all of my important airplane documents.
That wouldn't have worked for me either, because my Jeep that was parked in the hangar, but we found it. It was 350 yards across the airfield, like thrown through a commercial building and like in pieces. So we found that, but the tornado just direct hit the hangar. I was gone. I was at a conference speaking, and so the airplane was with me and completely destroyed everything, including the documents in the safe. So here's the thing, and this is my other piece of security advice for you. If you have important documents, one, get a digital copy of them. I had a digital copy that made my life a lot better. It's not the original, so it's not as good, but I'll complain about that later. The other thing is, do yourself a favor and like screw that safe into the ground. Like it's if it's gonna, I mean, this tornado, like just it was flattened. Just Google pictures of it, you'll see it's just completely flattened, this airport. And so I would recommend, and maybe even, I don't know, putting a business card inside the safe in case somebody finds it on their lawn.
Wow.
Steve, so where are you at, sir?
I'm in the Cleveland, Akron area. I'm in a suburb, though.
Yeah, you guys get tornadoes there too. I'm in New Orleans right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm
happy Mardi Gras.
Tornadoes. I've never seen one, but I have had to go to the bathroom a couple times and hide. And thank you, sir. I'm sorry that you don't get to celebrate Mardi Gras in, traditional New Orleans fashion, but I'm sure you will find some way to get some beads. You're married, right? Just throw them at your wife.
I have beads, like legit beads. We're good.
Just get a babysitter, throw the beads at your wife. You'll be fine. All right. So we started talking about quick wins. You said get a safe place, a vault of some sort, and keep your important PII type information about your team in that. What about for our clients?
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. So quick wins. I wish I could sit here, Steve, and say, hey, guy, go buy yourself a great antivirus. And here it is. This one will solve all of the problems for you. And you could just go buy it and it would just fix everything. Even though there's some marketing out there that says that their products do that, we haven't seen it. So quick wins on the security side. I would say the very first thing that I would recommend is you learn and understand about the recent security exploits that have come out for VPN concentrators that are built into our UTMs. So what I'm talking about here is you got a Sophos firewall, a Fortinet, a Sonic wall, something like this. Make sure you understand not only to apply those patches, because there's a number of patches that like if you haven't applied patches in a month or two for any of those devices, go apply them right away. The other thing though is that we're seeing some of these patches, some of these CVEs that came out, they're actually making it so that they're exposing credentials. So this firewall exposed credentials. Let's use Fortinet for an example. It exposed all the credentials of any user that was logging in over the VPN. That means if you have a Radius server on the back end, or maybe you're doing LDAP on the back end, those credentials are still exposed. And it's not a hash of the credentials. It's literally the credentials and the username of that user. And so if you're going and applying these patches, which is great, go do it. Make sure you change those passwords or consider implementing 2FA for logging into those devices, because those credentials are now out there. And they're not out there on the dark web. You're not going to find them like using like one of these dark web scanning tools, because think about it. If you were a hacker, I mean, put on your hacker hat for a minute and think about like if you found a way to get somebody's credentials and you could just go and like siphon them off of every Fortinet device out in the internet, that'd be a lot of freaking credentials. You probably wouldn't have enough time for that. Would you sell them on the dark web, or would you just keep them to yourself and use them to go churning through as you got caught up to this massive backlog that you just created? The answer we're seeing is churning through the backlog.
Them on the dark web.
Yeah.
For $1 million.
Well, the folks that are doing dark web credential scanning won't be buying from you because that's too expensive for them.
What do they charge?
For the folks at, I don't know how much they're paying, like the folks at like ID Agent or any of these people that are buying the dark web passcodes. But you can get passwords for free. Like you don't have to like pay for them. You can just go hunt them down yourself. There's lists. I mean,
I thought on the easiest dark web you could get the like, you know, they're like rare Pokemon cards, like, you know, the ones that nobody else has yet.
Well, those are the ones that cost money, but the free ones, you know, one thing you can do is just go to DEF CON and get yourself a couple terabytes of passwords. Because if you get there early, drop your disks in, and they'll just, I mean, 6 terabyte drives full of passwords for you to dig through.
That is unbelievable. What? Why?
So I actually have a set here, and the reason is because I want to make sure that my hashes aren't showing up in their lists.
Okay. Suppose that's a good reason. Okay. So why can't you just say, Steve, I need you to run Sophos with, you know, MTR. I need you to have a Sophos UTM with this subscription. I need you to have Vigilant and Total and run all your servers in Azure and this, that, and the other. Like, why can't you just tell us that, like, here's a way to make sure that you're probably never hacked, and even if you are, you're like HIPAA compliant out the wazoo, so you'll never get sued and lose.
Okay, first off, there's no way we can ever say that you'll never get sued. That's like saying you're completely secure, right?
Yeah. But how can you? But I just want to know how I can be completely secure.
So being completely secure is just a moving target. So you mentioned Total for a second there. Why can't I just install da 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 da? You mentioned Total and some others. I'm going to pick on Total for a second. I like Total. I think it's a great product. I'm using it here right now. And but I want to just point out that I did an analysis for an MSP yesterday, and we saw Total in their environment. Nothing went off. And so I was like, why didn't that happen? So when I talked to the MSP today, after we're done going through the results at the end, I said, hey, I just want to chat with you a little bit about Total. I want to understand. I saw it in the environment, and it didn't go off for the malicious payload we moved across the wire. And it should, because it's fully capable of deep packet inspection for SSL traffic. And the reason is because they didn't have it turned on. They had Total in the network. They had it installed, but it was giving them some problems with connections outbound. So the technician just turned it off. And so
that makes sense.
It does. It does.
And I want to clarify. We're talking about the Secure Global Network Cloud Platform Total, TODYL.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure we're talking about the same one.
Yep. Yep. And but anyway, so I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying, like, when stuff doesn't work, the first thing that our teams do is they turn it off, and then this is over troubleshooting, right? So the first thing you do is you turn it off, and then you turn stuff on until it works again. But what we're seeing is that instead of finishing it up and making everything work, they turn it off and they take the next emergency on. So we have this gap that happens. So you're asking me why I can't just recommend a product to just fix it and make you more secure. The first part is because we have engineers. And I'm not dogging anybody, but I'm saying that a lot of stuff happens between the seat and the keyboard, and some of those things that are happening aren't what you expect as a business owner.
Okay. And Vigilant, they'll just see all the logs and they just handle everything for us, so then I don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah.
Or other SOC services.
Yeah, so I'm sure. So I don't want to I don't want to say somebody's doing something or not doing something, but what I would ask you to do is test it, find out, and coming back
but
to.
How do you test it? So let's talk to my core audience. I would say are smaller MSPs under $500,000.
Okay.
So let's talk to these guys. Let's talk to the guys that are hovering at or below 150,000. These guys are the ones that the trolls in the chat are calling pizza techs and deliver food in the evening and whatever else. They are, let's be honest, they're probably behind on their cybersecurity training and keeping up with all this stuff, right? So how does somebody that's behind, first of all, catch up? Because it feels like a train going at full speed. And if we jump off the train because we just stopped doing continuing education, how do we catch up? I can't do it by foot, So
Yeah.
This goes back to how screwed are MSPs.
Yeah. Well, so here's what I would suggest, and I don't know how to do this, but what our partners are doing is we do a weekly call. It's a 45-minute call, and all we focus on is security. And each of those calls we do, like, everybody has a mission afterwards, just a small mission. And I mean, even for folks that can't, I understand we're expensive. Like, If you can't afford our services, you could at least take your team, and I'll give you some subjects that you could Google and, share videos that are out on the internet with your team, or even if there's a group of you getting together or whatever. And then you could do a quick mission once a week, just improve one thing. And as you start to do that as a team or as an individual, you'll start crawling. I mean, you just jumped off a train, for gosh sakes. Like, I'm sure you're hurting. So you'll start crawling. You'll start getting a couple of those things moved forward. And then you can take on bigger and bigger things. And that's going to be how you build momentum. Now, at some point, you're going to need to get on that train because you can't run for a really super long time on your own. But as a starting point, just a couple of things that you can do, like a good first mission would be make sure you have a rule amongst your team to no longer log into tier 2 devices like workstations where users are on with domain administrator credentials. Okay, super simple. That's the mission. And the next step, the next piece of that mission would be the next week. So you communicate that out to the 2 to 3 people on your team or however big you are. The next mission would be making sure to rotate all of your domain admin credentials for all of your clients. So that would be a week's process. Like, that's going to be the next mission. And so basically what you're doing is you're starting to build on these little pieces that keep an attacker from landing in an environment that you support, getting access to those domain administrator credentials that are cached on that computer. Because if you think about it, like, think about when you log into a computer. I mean, you've probably done this, right? So you have a computer that's off network that, a user has, and you can't log in because the domain administrator's never logged into it, aka it doesn't have cached credentials on it. However, if it had been logged in by an administrator, you'd be able to log into that device. And this is because, like, when you log into a device, there's a whole process where the LSAS goes through and caches your credentials inside of an NTLM hash on that device. But here's the thing, that hash, that thing that it cached, well, we could hack it, right? So that's the first step.
It's
that's
unhashable.
But the problem is that a hash, like hacking a hash, is a pain in the ass. Like, it's going to take us some time. Like, we're going to have to sit here and run passwords against it until we match that hash, and then we get in. But what you could do instead is take that hash, push it into a network socket, like connect to another device with SMB or WMI or whatever, and pass that hash through as though you know what that actual password was that generated the hash. And if the computer on the other side has the same credential cached on it, as in that administrator logged into both computers, it will think that you know the password and it will let you on. And this is lateral movement. This is the best way to move laterally. I don't have to guess your password. I just have to get your hash. And then I can move from one device to another because I know what the hash is. And this is a Microsoft feature that we're all up against. And so that simple mission that I just mentioned, if you are logging into local computers with domain admin rights, have at it, go fix this. This is an important piece to protecting your clients and your livelihood and your reputation.
And can I just say on a side note, you're making me want to go to McDonald's and get some hash browns. So that's a thing. All right, so that's cool. Like, so I'll be honest, man. Like, I've never tried hacking anything before. So, like, I don't know. Like, what else do they do that like? I mean, that just seems like a simple, like. I mean, I know it's a task, but like, oh yeah, just change your passwords. That makes you the moving target, like you said. So what are some other like easy things that these hackers, the red teams, the bad actors, whatever, are doing out there, and how can we kind of prevent some of those things?
Yeah. So another one that I would definitely, well, Steve, help me out here. Would your clients use like IT glue, or is that like, I'm just trying to figure out like if that would be something they would buy or not. Like if that's like,
So so think of, the typical smaller business environment.
yep,
No domain,
yep,
maybe Azure AD, but probably not.
okay,
Everything's in the cloud. Microsoft 365 now. The computers. Let's be realistic. If we're going to keep talking about these smaller MSPs, let's be realistic. Um, the computers may be connected to Azure AD, like when they set up the computer, or however like I don't use Azure AD, can you tell? But like if they are setting up computers on Azure AD, I bet you not all of them are consistently set up that way.
do they have RMMs
Yeah, they're probably using Synchro or Datto RMM.
or like Ninja maybe, or is that, I don't know.
Maybe Ninja, probably closer to Synchro though, or a
Okay,
Terra,
okay,
which
okay,
means they're
cool.
using Splash Top if they're using Datto or a Terra
Okay,
to get remote access into the machines.
yep,
And with Synchro, they've got their own HTML5 thing that, I'll be honest, it's hit or miss whether it works well for me or not. Um,
okay,
there might be some people using ConnectWise Control or Screen Connect, whatever you want to call it, but not because they have auto, automate. Um, it's because they just signed up for a subscription to ConnectWise Control because they hate the Synchro or the Splash Top, or
gotcha.
they want ad hoc or whatever. So like these are the kinds of tools that we're running. But I
Yep,
guess when I look at things like, you know, let's just be real. Like, okay, so I've got Screen Connect, but I put 2FA on my account, so like I don't have to worry about anything then, right?
yep, yep. So here's the reason I was asking about the RMM. I just wanted to understand, like, do we have automation capability? Because
Oh,
if
sure, yeah, they'll do
if I
scripting.
was if I were a if I were like sub $150,000 a year, like this would be something I would definitely want to make sure that I have. Um, so so first off, make sure you have some scripting capabilities. If you do,
Synchro can honestly give ConnectWise a run for its money for these smaller MSPs. Synchro's
nice.
scripting, they have a PowerShell. What do you call it when they've got their own PowerShell commands? CMDlet or whatever. I don't know. Where you can launch Synchro commands that can create tickets, assign them text, create notes, create time entries, close tickets, so that way they're ready to invoice. So, I mean, just like you can do with the ConnectWise products, you can have Synchro installed onto an agent, um, or the agent installed into an endpoint. It detects something, it create a ticket, it can run a script to remediate the issue, and then update the note based on the result. So it can do if then, just like PowerShell.
Perfect.
So yeah, it can do all that.
So here's what I'd recommend. Some easy wins. The first one is learn how to push group policy out through your RMM, especially if you're working in these smaller organizations that have 1 to 5 computers. This allows you to, because Azure AD doesn't come with group policy, and it's
Right.
so you
So we have
could
to create our own computer and user policies,
exactly.
essentially.
And you could do this 2 ways. The first way is you could learn how to use Intune, but that doesn't scale very well, especially if you're trying to keep up with the train, right? So what you could do instead is inside of Microsoft's Security Compliance Toolkit, there's a pretty awesome little tool called lgpo.exe, and it does local group policy, and you can actually push that to individual devices. And so that would be one thing that I would highly recommend that you do. And that allows you to do two things. Okay. The first thing is if you're working with somebody that has compliance requirements, let's say they're CMMC or NIST 800 171, or maybe their HIPAA type compliance situation on your hands, then you can push this group policy out to do things like require password resets on the endpoint, locking screens, like all of this stuff. But now you're doing it through your RMM. So you design it once and then you push it to all of your clients, rather than trying to do like one for each client and trying to run everything inside of Active Directory the old way. And then the really cool thing is if it, let's say that the dental office or whoever you're supporting decides they want to go with somebody else. Well, guess what? You own all their group policy. Like, you're the one that's pushing it out. You're the one that's managing it. It's not part of their environment, so it comes with you. So that makes you a little more sticky from a compliance standpoint. Now, I hate selling on compliance, but I love being sticky. So this would be something I would consider doing if I were on the call today. And it's not too bad to set up. And again, that what you're looking for is Microsoft Security Compliance Toolkit 1.0 and the executable lgpo.exe. It does a whole bunch of cool stuff. Like, you can dump group policy out into a little file that you can then push out through your RMM, or you can dump it out into a bunch of commands that you can then turn into a nice little PowerShell and push it out through Synchro or whatever you're just talking about. So lots of great ways to push and create a more secure environment for your users without breaking the bank and buying a bunch of tools.
I gotta say, I really like the idea. I was told by another MSP who's way smarter than me that group policy's dead because we don't have a server and your RMM can just do all this stuff, so we don't need group policy, right?
Yep. So what I'm saying is, group policy isn't dead, but managing it through Active Directory, I think that's dead. And so this is basically how Intune works. It's just that this allows you to do it in a single pane of glass for all of your clients, which makes it scalable, which is a key point as you're building your business. If it's not scalable, stop doing it.
So Microsoft, I'm told, I have not played, has kind of rebranded Intune as like Endpoint Manager or something along those lines.
Lighthouse.
And they're basically, okay. I'm under the impression that they're making it more MSP friendly because they want to make it so we can, I thought, manage multiple tenancy type stuff.
Yeah, so they are, but watch your back, guys. Watch your back. They're collecting all of this information, and I hate to sound like that guy that's wearing the tin hat, but I'm definitely wearing the tin hat on this one. I'm like, Microsoft is looking for a way to have their own solution, right? So maybe a $30 to $50 an endpoint solution that includes support for users. And I think that's around the corner. So just watch your back, guys. Like, don't hang all of your tools in that spot and then be frustrated when they get taken from you. That's what I'm worried about.
So I hear you, and I've kind of felt that way for years, to be honest. Like, what do they need us for? I had a really great conversation I think it was last week. Yeah. You familiar with Amy Babinchak?
Name sounds really
She has been
familiar.
like she has been in Microsoft MVP for like years in a row. Um, I can't remember if it's 6 or 8 or 16. Like it was a phenomenal sounding number, no matter what it was, right? But she basically she doesn't believe in RMMs because she uses um, everything that Microsoft provides.
Yep.
So it was Intune, now it's the new thing, and so when she's configuring a machine, she's configuring it to like a T of best practice. So she is literally using um, what is it, Windows Defender? I don't even know what it's called anymore because I haven't used the thing ever. Like she uses Windows Defender, man. Like having a conversation with her gave me heart palpitations. And then a buddy of mine, he's like, no, man, she's the real deal. Like the way she's setting all of this stuff up, like she could literally train people at Microsoft on how to do this correctly, like when they get hired. That's how legit she is with her Microsoft knowledge. And I felt bad because now I wish I had asked her some different questions. Who knows? Maybe I'll get her on again, right? Like, and it's
Yeah. Well,
not that
you know what you could
not
do
that I
is
asked her.
you could lead with Bruce McCully said, "Watch your back," and then she'd be like, "Well, who's that guy?" And then she'd be out to get me because
Well,
I
no,
have a
I
different
did.
feeling
I
about this
asked
whole thing.
her. I asked her about this. I said, well, why would we do all more with Microsoft? Because they're trying to get rid of us. And she said, I don't believe that one bit. She said, I think you're foolish. I paraphrasing. She didn't say anyone's foolish or an idiot or anything, but she basically kind of said without saying, I think you're foolish if you believe that, because what Microsoft is doing, like, sure, customers don't necessarily need you anymore to like install a printer or some of these things that they've made so stupid easy that like I literally just sent a KB article to someone the other day when they were freaking out asking me how to install a printer on their computer at church. Like and they were like, oh my gosh, I followed those instructions, it was that easy. Like why do you still have a job? and
Because
and and
I
Amy
know where the
goes,
articles are to send you.
yeah, well, because I know how to do that without reading the article. So, um, but no, what Amy was saying is like it's not about fixing the mouse and setting the screen resolution anymore. It's not about installing Microsoft Office. Like anybody can do these types of things now. It's more about creating the security policies and advising on compliance and like that type of stuff where now you're having a deeper um, conversation with your clients and so they might take some of this computer management stuff away from us, but Bruce, I gotta say, I'm to the point where with all the cybersecurity stuff, let them effing have it. Like, there are better things that we can be, doing and consulting for with our clients. And I think, being the tier one tech support is a waste of our time and talent.
That's that's a fair
you're not gonna
statement.
go to a you're not gonna go to a brain surgeon and say, hey, so I get this rash. Can you take a look? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Not that I'm
that's a
saying you and I are as great as brain surgeons, but maybe
that's a
you.
fair statement. But I like the reason I say just kind of like keep an eye on this, and the reason I would say definitely consider doing your work inside of an RMM rather than using the complete Microsoft stack is kind of twofold. The first one is do some Googling and see what they're up to. Just do that for yourself. This
Sure.
the second one is um, I want to make sure you're taking a layered approach when it comes to security. One of the things that Steve, you mentioned was what are some easy things that we can make sure we're doing. And when I say layered approach, people misunderstand what I mean here. They think that I mean, okay, so if I get the data protection layer right, and I get the endpoint layer right, and the application layer right, and now all of a sudden I am safe. No, what I mean by layered approach is,
I don't think MSPs think that these days.
yeah,
I think MSPs are smart enough to know that security is like an onion and it's got multiple layers. And, you know, just because you have Webroot for your, all in one antivirus, DNS, whatever, doesn't mean you don't want to get something else on the
perfect.
computer that also complements it.
Perfect. So exactly something else from a different vendor. So like you can't be a Sophos stack or you can't be a Microsoft stack these days. Perfect. Yep, we're on the same page.
So, would you say like the smart thing for me to do would be to install McAfee and Norton, and just like that way that both of them?
As Steve, as long as you have zone alarm, you're okay, man. That's the original
Okay.
zero trust.
I
Okay.
forgot. I forgot all about that. Did you know I had PC Matic on last year? I was waiting for
No,
that water to come spitting out of
it
your mouth.
almost did. It almost did. Can you not say stuff like that when I'm having a glass of water, drinking my coffee here?
So I had PC Matic on last year, and their commercials are horrendous. I think we can all agree on that point. But like, I had them demo their product. It was actually two different episodes, because the first episode was questions and disbelief at the audacity of having PC Matic on, and all that. And then the second one was, let's do a demo. Share your screen. Show me how this thing works. And it was kind of impressive. Like, it's a zero trust platform, and it like kind of works. In fact, I know an MSSP who did basically a security audit of one of his clients. They're using PC Matic, and while he thought it was like, funny because PC Matic, like after doing the security audit, he could not see a reason to tell them to get rid of it or switch to something else or anything like that. It checked off all the boxes.
Wow, I'm writing this down because now I'm going to go find an MSP. Actually, if you're on this session and you're listening to us right now and you're running PCmatic in your environment, can you do me a huge favor and sign up for an analysis? Because I want to see this. Like, I'm into it.
He's not. I know that MSSP is not running PCmatic himself. It's just one of, and so he's a really unique company, in my opinion, just because they do so much security stuff that, he could tell you he's got 11,000 endpoints that he manages, but like of these 11,000, only 300 of them might be MSP endpoints. The rest of them, he might be doing a very specific security thing. Like a lot of them, he's probably doing email phishing remediation type stuff. So yeah, so he's got all this type of stuff, and then he also does a lot of security stuff where there's an MSP, and then they're bringing his company in as like the security expert. So I think the two of you would have a great conversation. Um, I can make an intro if you're interested.
Yeah, sounds cool.
Um,
Definitely.
I would be curious to see if his security blows your mind. Like if he would allow you to do an assessment, does are there even any holes? Because he's constantly saying things that make my eyes glaze over, and um it's really cool stuff. Like, he's awesome. Like, he has his team doing red team, blue team stuff. Um I'm genuinely curious to see if he passes your test. Do you have people that like they have you do the analysis and you don't come up with anything?
Absolutely. Yep. Um, it's we usually come up with stuff because we need, like, I mean, there's always a response, right? That's what we're looking for, is what does the response look like? So it's not like we didn't come up with anything, but they responded. It took them X amount of time to mitigate. Like that gives us, like, basically we give them the numbers back, like how they actually did. So it's not like it's a waste of time for anybody involved in that case. It just gives them an understanding of how their team is responding and what type of routine response they have.
So I think we might be a year late at this point, but let's talk about remote workers for a second. So at this point, what is more important? My client's business office network or the endpoint that's probably at Susie's house that her kids may or may not use after she's done working for the day?
Oh, this is a touchy subject, right? So at Susie's house, is little Tommy on that network too? Like going to Pornhub in his free time and stuff like this on a different computer? I'm just wondering,
He
because
would
that's always
never.
a
And
situation.
and Big Tommy probably does too. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So I think you got a lot of problems going on here that you're dealing with, right? So the first one is the business network still a priority? And it depends. It depends on where the sensitive data is, right? So if you have sensitive data on the business network, it doesn't matter where those computers are. The business network is still important to you. And sensitive data could be intellectual property. It could be PII, like you mentioned earlier. It could be PHI, whatever. Wherever that's at is very important. The other important part is the endpoint, right? And the endpoint is so important. This is why, as an attacker, I want to be on the endpoint. If I get to a server and you did your things right, I probably can't get to the data because it's all encrypted and hiding in places that I can't see. But on the endpoint, the user has to do this little thing called work. And that means they have to unencrypt the data and look at it or touch it or feel it or have tokens to access it and all that stuff. So they give me everything I need to get to the data itself. So both of these are really important components of your security posture. And I can't say that one is more important than the other. I can say that the one on Susie's network with little Tommy and big Tommy and Pornhub and all the stuff that's going on over there, there's a lot of risk there. So it becomes what's the risk component? Like, where's the highest risk at? And then you start to look very, very closely at remote users. And one of the things our tools do, like when you do an analysis for a prospect or one of your clients for that matter, is it actually does an analysis of everything else around it. So it looks at all of the other devices on the network and it determines what the risk factors are with those devices. So if you sent a link to Susie and she clicked it as part of their analysis, you're going to find little Tommy and big Tommy's computers, and you will see that they don't have AV in their maybe not very friendly machines to be around. So that you can start looking at something like you mentioned Total, an SGN like that, or maybe even implementing Zone Alarm, whatever it is, right?
Or PCmatic?
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
Oh boy. All right. So I think I have one last question, and that is with cybersecurity, starting to feel almost like its own job. should MSPs really be doing cybersecurity anymore? Or on the flip side, should they, if they're good enough at it, stop installing Office and helping Susie install printers and just focus on cybersecurity?
So that's one of the reasons that
Basically, should they be doing both, right?
yeah. So this is exactly the reason that I started Galactic. And what it comes down to is this. Just like you mentioned earlier on the call, there's no end in sight when it comes to cybersecurity. And if we don't, as MSPs, figure out how to make it part of what we're doing, and we give it up to somebody else, like you give up the cybersecurity responsibility to another outside firm or somebody like this, you're giving up the rights to your oil well. You're giving them the rights to your land. Like, you won't be able to do cybersecurity later if you don't learn it and start working on it and start living it now. And so when I said we're taking the guesswork out of cybersecurity, what I mean is we're helping MSPs learn to become that cybersecurity expert. And can you do both? I don't know if you need to, because the rest of the industry is changing. Like I said, Microsoft is making modifications to what they're doing, and all of these other people are trying to make it so easy for users to get their stuff done. Your ability to be on the security side of the conversation will make it so that you're able to maintain those relationships, maybe even grow new ones that will allow you to make additional money. So my answer is yes, cybersecurity needs to be part of your strategic plan going forward.
All right. Well, what do you think, Bruce? Do you think I could get you back on here to really dig in deep into like where do we start type stuff and teach us how to do a little bit of cybersecurity?
Yeah, I could. I mean, why don't you see what your guests or your audience wants to do, and if they want to go through, maybe spending some time going through the cyber stack 2.0, like what needs to be in people's cybersecurity stacks from a security standpoint and also from a sales standpoint, because part of cyber, I mean, we're talking about the sexy parts right now. We're talking about the hackers accessing your hashes and hash browns and all this other stuff, right? But there's a not so sexy part, which is communicating to the client that they want this stuff or that they should do this stuff without telling them they have to do it. Because if I were sitting here and I was like, Steve, you have to stop speeding. And you enjoyed speeding, or you didn't even know you were speeding or whatever. I'm not making a good case for you to change your driving behaviors. But if I sat down and showed you how, as you get past 67 miles an hour, the stopping force of 2 cars is too much for the human body's organs to withstand, even with like seat belts and airbags and all that stuff. Your organs just can't handle that amount of strain on your body. Maybe I might be able to get you to consider reducing your speed. But if I took out a picture and showed you what a person looks like when they hit a wall at 144 miles an hour, like, that would probably change your mind. Like, we would have a different conversation going on at that point.
It certainly would. It certainly would. All right. Well, I have. I was wrong. I have one last question, and then we're going to wrap up. Which one's more secure, PC or Mac?
Oh no, really? You got to do that to me?
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk Android or iPhone instead? I mean, PC or Mac just seems so like, it's just cliche, right, guys? I mean, you you already know the answer. Like, why are you even asking? So I'm going to go with Mac.
iPhone or Mac then? Or iPhone or wait, what?
I'm going to go with Mac.
Okay. And iPhone is obviously more secure because at least just about everyone has updated to the latest version of iOS. Like, duh. And you're in the walled garden? Come on.
Yep.
I love my iPhone.
Yep.
And my iPad and my MacBook and my iPad Pro and my AirPods.
I have a little G4. Are you familiar? Do you remember
Why?
this? It
Why?
still runs because I like the Power PC
Is that what you
chip
spend your
architecture
millions of dollars on?
was
Is
absolutely amazing.
Power Mac G4s and airplanes? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, have you gotten yourself the new Mac with the M1 chip?
I haven't. You know, we're developing our Mac agent right now. So I anticipate going and buying one, but no, I haven't. I haven't bought any new Mac toys in a while. The last 9 months has all been in PC land, and so I'm running a PC because I need to be one of the people eating the dog food. So
I'm sorry for your loss
I'll be back.
of security. Well, I'll say this: whenever you do finally need to get a Mac, you'll have to remember that there's Intel and now there's Apple M1 chips. So you'll need to, I suspect, have one of each. So that
Yes.
way,
Testing.
you can do, but it's a business write-off for what is that, research and development, right? So
Yes.
but the M1, dude, like, let me tell you, it is fast. The M1 with 8 gigs of RAM made my MacBook Pro i7 32 gigs of RAM look like a piece of dog shit.
Whew. Okay. All right. Well, I'm hopping on apple.com after this call. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a Mac Mini. Like, that was a desktop. Ugh. And the MacBook Air is basically the same as the MacBook Pro, just with no fan. So if you're doing like Photoshop or Illustrator or Premiere, like, really, really CPU, GPU intensive stuff, and you've got 8 million tabs open on top of that, like, it'll have to throttle because it doesn't want to get past a certain, you know, temperature. But you don't ever have to worry about the fan coming on.
That's pretty nice. And you wouldn't even hear it on the microphone.
Yeah, which I don't know if you're hearing it right now or not, but it's about to take off like your plane that can't take off or something because you don't have.
Oh no, I'm good. I'm good. Digital copies of logbooks. Actually, that's a great story. Just a reminder, guys, back everything up. Make sure it's backed up, especially your personal stuff or things like this. The logbooks, they actually matter that they're the original copy. The digital copies are not good enough. I can't just print them out on a piece of paper. But here's the little trick. I could print them off and then have my mechanic sign each page with his current like FAA number, and the FAA trusts the mechanic. So now we have a circle of trust, and this is how hacking happens.
Couldn't you just go buy a new logbook and fill it all out with all that information that you took pictures of?
Has to have says the FAA. They're sticklers about all this stuff. Has to have the actual signature of the person that did the work and their FAA identifier number. Yeah.
Oh well, I guess you're just stuck with that plane forever.
I know, but I love it, so it's okay.
All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for being a guest here. I feel like we could just talk forever, but we shouldn't. Thank you to those of you that got to watch live and for your questions. And also thank you to those that watched later. So we're going to take off. Bruce, I can't wait to have you back so we can talk more. And you all have an awesome day. Take care, everybody.